Hello and welcome. This is your first lesson. This is module 1 of the Get Unstuck program.
Mhm.
I'm Jess Genevieve Brown. You can call me Jess. I'm going to be here to host today, and I'll help you walk through all of Dr. Randy Berlin's incredible life-changing teachings. Hi, Randy. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Jess. Good to be here.
I've been working with Dr. Berlin for over a year now myself, and I can vouch to these teachings. So let's dive into the program. Today is module 1, and we're going to discuss 3 topics. We've got setting intentions, we have denial and acceptance, and we'll be talking about identifying and taking ownership of negative habits. Today, you will be thinking about what intentions you want to set for yourself. You're going to consider whether you are living in denial. We're going to contemplate together what you might need to accept in order to move forward and heal. And we're going to understand the importance of acceptance and taking ownership, even if it means you have to accept something that isn't your fault. Okay, so these are the things we're going to dive into in today's first module. Let's start off with the first topic, which is setting intentions. So Randy, can you tell us a little bit, what does it mean to set intentions for a program like this one, and why is that important?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. It's well because it's critical in the sense that you have to get clear on what it is you want, what it is you're after, and what it is you want to change. And until you get some clarity on that, you're going to be having difficulty focusing the energy that's required. And it's going to be important for you to recognize that if you have energy for this, then you're going to be successful. It's just like anything else. If you don't have enough energy to complete the task, you're going to be unsuccessful. It requires. So once you've decided what your intention is, you want to get clear, and then you begin the process of putting energy in and finding that I'm going to have to set some things aside because I have so many things going on, and I have to decide, is this really a priority for me? Is making changes in my life really a priority, or am I just doing it to get somebody off my back, or just to say I'm doing something, or I want to stick my toe in and try a little bit, but I don't really want to make much effort. If those are questions around your intention that you can answer, and if you can say, really, I'm sick and tired of the way things are, I really want to change the quality of my life, I want to change my habits, and I'm willing to set some other things aside. Maybe I won't be on social media for 3 hours a day or 10 hours a day. Maybe I won't be watching sports all day long. Maybe I won't be drinking all day long or doing drugs or watching pornography or a lot of other things that take a lot of energy from me. Maybe I'm willing to set some of those aside, some of those things that I'm using to avoid experiencing life, and take that energy and put it into creating an ability to experience life in a way that's satisfying and enjoyable for me. And that's why I'm here. That's what I'm here to share with you. And if you have the willingness, and here's the interesting thing about willing. Some people tell me, I'd like to be willing, I want to be willing, but I'm just not. I say, okay, would you be willing to consider that it might be important for you to just look at, are you willing to be willing? Are you willing to be willing? Because that's something many people have to say to themselves and say, you know, I'm not sure. This is kind of scary. This sounds like a lot of work. It might be painful, it might be scary. And I'm not sure I'm willing to do that. And so we come back to the facts are anything we do in this program is going to be allowing you to release some impressions, some experiences, some blockages in your body that have accumulated over a lifetime. And as you do that, you're going to recognize I'm not creating any new pain here. I'm just letting go of pain that I'm walking around with anyway. It takes energy to contain and hold this distress in our bodies. This takes energy. And as you release some of these things that you're carrying with the intention of wanting to change your life, then you have actually more energy because you're not using it to hold on to things that you're afraid of that might come out. You're using the energy to go, wait a minute, I'm going to make some changes. And in that process, if I'm going to clean the closet out, I'm going to have to get rid of some things. And which makes it nice to be able to look in a closet and say, really the only thing in my closet right now are the things that I really want to wear or that I really like or that I want to make use of. Intention is critical in that way. And I'm just asking you to make sure that you look at that for yourself. And if you say, I'm not really willing to do this much work, then this is probably not the program for you. We're here to change things, not to talk about it, not to wonder about it, not to think about it. We're here to make things happen. And that's what I want to share with you.
You're really helping people to determine why they're really here. So we're going to set intentions through this week's homework. We're going to discuss setting intentions, and we'll talk more about that at the end of this video. So stay tuned to the end. You have your homework, and we'll discuss the group call. But that's why we're here. In setting intentions, Randy, you put it so well. We're here to figure all this out and to be honest with ourselves. So on the topic of being honest with ourselves, denial and acceptance. Let's discuss that. So what is denial and why is it important to understand it in this context?
All right. In this context, we have to recognize the fact that we may not know we're in denial. We may say to ourselves, I look at myself and I don't do anything different than anybody else that I know. Or, my wife or my partner or my friends or whatever, they just kind of seem like they're a little bit too picky and they're just, I don't really agree with it, what they say. And so consequently, I don't really think I have a problem. I look at other people now. I'm not in jail. I haven't lost my job yet, or maybe I have. I haven't lost a relationship or a marriage, or maybe I have. But either way, I can still be in denial. You can be in denial and lose everything and say something like, people don't understand. I just like to have a couple of cocktails. And just because my wife left me, I can't drive and lost my business, and my liver is, is ill and swollen. I just, their cocktail is still important to me. So denial is critical. And it's like thinking that I'm going to go from New York to Los Angeles. And I say, oh, that's nice. And they said, well, but I live in Detroit. I said, well, what do you think the first thing is going to be required if you're going to go from New York to Los Angeles? Well, I don't know when when it works out or when it comes. I said, well, maybe the first thing you're going to have to do is get out of Detroit. Because if you can't accept that you're really in Detroit, you're not in New York, you're never going to be able to go from New York to Los Angeles. And to me, that's how denial works with problems, meaning that if I keep saying that I want to do these things, but I'm not willing to look at what's stopping me, what's keeping me stuck, what's in the way. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, those are habitual habits or those are things that we're in denial of. And we say, well, it's not that bad. I'll go to the bar, but I only drink one. And then you close up the bar. Or, you say you're going to only watch social media for an hour today, but then, 7 hours later, you realize you just spent the whole day doing it. Then you have to look at, wait a minute, I have a real problem with these kinds of patterns that seem to have gotten developed to the point that they have a life of their own. And if I crack the door on that, it's to take over and run my life. Mm-hmm. It's no longer something that I'm just doing occasionally. You look at people that have problems with drinking. They say, well, I can control it. And I say, well, the first question usually in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is one of the better treatments that's ever been, created for alcoholism, was that they asked the question, can you control your drinking? And if you said yes, then you had a problem. And if you said no, you had a problem, because the truth is people that don't have a problem don't think about it. Yeah. They don't try to control it. They just don't think about it. They have half a glass and they leave it. Person that's got a problem looks at that half a glass and thinks, how could you possibly leave half a glass? Are you crazy? Don't you understand? And so there's just these different ways of thinking that are easy for us because we've done them habitually now. And we've been avoiding certain things that maybe are problematic for us. And we have to come out of denial so that we can start to accept that I got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
unless I accept that fact, that simple fact, I will not see any reason to make a change.
Yeah, if you don't have a problem, then you have nothing to solve, right? You need to figure out what the problem is and be honest with yourself and confront yourself. I think
Exactly.
that's a big word there too, right, Randy? The confrontation part.
Yes. Well, yes. And I think one of the things that I've noticed that's helpful for that is that, I look at myself and I say, do I have a problem? No, 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 no. But I have some people that I care about. And maybe I have some people around me that I actually trust, which is not that common for a lot of people that have addictive processes. But nonetheless, maybe I have some. And they actually are telling me, I'm really concerned about you, Randy, that you've got these, you're drinking way too much. You're not making it to work. You're acting like you're sick all the time. You're calling in sick to work. You can't get it together. You don't do the activities with your family that you say you want to do. And I say, okay, I don't really see it that way, but let me consider the possibility that I might be wrong.
Mm.
That maybe I do have a problem. Maybe these people are not just bugging me and trying to control me. Because, people that have addictive processes want to control. They want control. They don't want somebody to control them. They don't want anybody to tell them what to do. And generally, they don't trust other people because they can't trust themselves to do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
And so, confronting yourself with this reality is sometimes painful, sometimes really painful, and other times it's just a matter of saying, okay, these other people are telling me, so let me explore it. I'm willing to be willing to explore it in more depth, just because I have the sense that maybe what people are suggesting to me may be true.
So when you're honest with yourself or when you're willing to be willing, then you have the opportunity to create change. And that is
Yeah,
what we're here for, right? We want to change the bad habits because they've
yeah.
become ingrained in our lifestyles. And we didn't create these because we're weak or anything, right? So what is it that happens when you're able to be honest with yourself?
Well, with the honesty, then I have a place to start. It's like being in Detroit as opposed to being in New York. If I'm in Detroit saying I'm going to go from New York, as I said a minute ago. So if I'm honest with myself, I can say I have a drinking problem. If I start, I don't seem to be able to predict how long or how much I'm going to consume. I
Mhm.
can't. I have to be honest about that. If I'm not, then I'll keep lying to myself,
Yeah.
and that's usually one of the challenges. People who cannot be honest with themselves have their tendency to listen to the lies, the rationalizations, the justifications, and believe those are the truth. So the idea of having this rigorous honesty is kind of the foundation for recovery, and it's being honest with yourself first. Because if you don't do that, then you're not going to go anywhere. And the blessing is when you get honest with yourself, then change can happen. Because I say, okay, I do have a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm not going to just give up my problem. I'm going to create some new habits which are based on things that actually enhance my life, improve my life, enrich my life, not just stop something. I'm going to replace it with something that serves the function because every addictive process, every habit pattern has a function it started with. And it's just saying, okay, what's the function and what can I do differently? And if I take responsibility for that and I'm honest about that, then I can do something. If I blame her, him, or somebody else for my drinking, well, if you had a wife or a husband like I did, you drink too. Those are things that people say commonly.
For
So
sure.
the only problem is, or if you lived in the place that I lived, or if you live in the town that I lived in, or, if you had the friends that I have, or, you know, those are the lies that people tell themselves. And when you get honest and you confront yourself and say, hey, man, the only thing that's going to happen here that's going to improve your quality of life is for you to accept that you have a problem and be willing to take the responsibility and action to do something about it. And we're going to be here to give you ways to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to help you be able to sort that out so that you're looking at solutions which are going to enhance your life, not just stop drinking, just not stopping the pornography, say. It's
Yeah.
that, wait a minute, I want to stop something, but I want to create something that is better.
Yes.
and more enriching, and that I feel good about when I'm done, as opposed to feeling ashamed and drained and mad at myself.
I think the
So,
really important point here too, and this is something that you taught me, is that these habits, we haven't created them because we're weak or because we've done anything wrong, right? We're not a bad person. We haven't developed any of these negative patterns because we've done anything wrong. It's human nature to develop these habits. It's something that happens that helps us to survive and avoid harm. It
exactly.
starts off as a good natural thing, and then it takes us down a different path. Can you speak on that a little?
Yeah, so so in the beginning, maybe you were a teenager and you started smoking cigarettes because all your friends smoke cigarettes, and you wanted to show you could be like them, and you did it initially so that you could connect, so you feel like you belong. You're the smoker group, or you're the drinker group, or you're the whatever group, the dopers. The bottom line of it was, not only did it maybe give you some soothingness, and there were some things that happened with the drugs, but underneath that usually is the issue of connection. And so usually the thing that most people that come to this program have learned, either to have very destructive kind of connections, because that's what they were raised with and
Mhm.
trained with, and got in the habit of looking for and responding to because it was familiar and it was the one way you knew how to connect, and or environments which where there was very little connection with anything. It was more like living in a museum. And in those situations, then you not only don't have connections, but you also don't have any sense of what it's like to have a connection. I mean, if you had bad connections, at least you know, okay, this is what it feels like to have a connection. I'm connected to these people, we all drink. And as long as we're drinking, we have a connection. As soon as we stop drinking, that chemical is gone. Then the chemical connection is gone. Then the feeling of connection is gone. And that's, you know, then that becomes the awareness. If you stop drinking, there may be people who will not want to be with you anymore because they only connect to people who drink. And you have to address that issue, that people, there will be those folks who alcohol and their drinking will be more important than you. So but looking for connections that are satisfying, that are reciprocal. There's really good research out now that's showing that the most successful businesses are relationships in which people have reciprocity in their interactions.
Oh, that's
They find that if we're in this together and we're mutually supportive of each other being successful, rather than competing and being better than and putting other people down so we can get the awards and the acknowledgement and praise, if we actually work together and have a reciprocity system going on, that those businesses are most productive and most efficient.
and the same goes in
And
this context.
with every relationship that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And if I'm in a relationship which I go to and I drain the person that I'm with, eventually they're going to want to avoid me, and it's not going to work. And I'm going to have an expectation they're supposed to fix me.
Yeah.
So I have that going on. Or maybe I go to places that I want to fix other people, and the only people that come to me are the ones who want somebody to rescue them.
Yeah.
And because I have some skills in that, because I've trained in that habit as a child to take care of my parents or others around me,
Yeah.
then I might go into that mode of self taking care of others as my way of connecting and having a relationship and feeling like I know what I'm doing. If I'm in a relationship in which I was only the caretaker and there was nobody there to take care of me, and it's not uncommon that the kids end up being little pseudo adults and they end up taking care of their parents because the parents are acting childlike or childish or immature or irresponsible, then that's all you know how to do.
Yeah.
And so you go out and you try to be with other people. So you'll draw in people who want to be rescued. You'll draw in people who want to be taken care of, but you'll never be satisfied.
Mhm.
And you will get resentful after a while because you think, I'm doing all this for everybody else. Why doesn't somebody do it for me? Because there's a deep fantasy inside, because there's a little kid that's driving this habit that said, maybe if I could take care of mom and dad, good enough that they could actually be parents to me and take care of me. If I could only do it right, if I could only get them not so unhappy, so depressed, so angry, whatever it is. If I and for little kids, because they're self-centered and they're supposed to be, they assume it must be my fault. If I'm not doing it good enough, it must be my fault that dad's not mad at me, or that dad's not unhappy all the time, or that mom's not depressed all the time or anxious. That must not be doing my job. So we have these distortions of connection that become habit patterns that were set purposely to help us survive and maybe help others in the process so that we might get our needs met.
It's not your fault. We develop these things because we seek connection,
Yes.
because we're human, and then they become patterns and time flies, as we all know. And then it becomes something that can be out of control sometimes. And that's why we're here to identify these things and also to be honest about it. So we've covered that now, the importance of the honesty and getting yourself out of denial, recognizing that this pattern is there, not blaming yourself, knowing that it is not your fault. This came to be because you were seeking out connections, which is your human nature at work. And now, what happens now? What if we just accept? Can you tell me a little bit about what is acceptance and how is it applied in this context?
I have a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm accepting the fact that I'm the only one that can change it. I'm the only one that can do anything about it. It's my action, my willingness, my energy. It's going to make something happen. But I have to have good information. And if I don't have good information, I may go off on tangents that are really not that productive, not that helpful. Because there's plenty of people offering all kinds of solutions. I can just say from my experience of my own personal development, because everything I teach, I've done myself, learned myself, and practiced myself, either by taking it from other people or developing it for myself. And then I pass it on. One of my commitments early on was do not pass on anything that I don't know works. Now that comes out of my lack of trust, but it also comes out of then I can wholeheartedly tell you that I know this works. At least it worked for me.
So Get Unstuck is all your expertise
Exactly.
and what you've been through. And what we're doing with this is we're providing support and encouragement and guidance and community. But the bottom line is that you, the student, you who are here enrolled in this program, it is up to you to do the legwork, right?
It's mandatory. We're not contemplating. We're not thinking about it. We're not discussing it endlessly. Or not. I don't want to hear of all your problems and all the reasons you can't do things. I know they're there, and I know they're legitimate in your mind. Yes, that's true. And what are we going to do? The next step is this. Let's just take it one step at a time. This is not about having to climb the mountain in one swoop. This is about looking at the mountain and saying, okay, this seems like it's too much. And it is, if you think about it as a one sweeping movement. When I was working on my dissertation, when I was in graduate school, it was so daunting to me for years. All I could think about was, at least once a day, was how could I quit and get out of here? This is too much. And then I'd say, wait a minute, Randy, let's just break it down to what can you do right now? Well, I could maybe start the paper that I'm supposed to be writing, or the first part of my dissertation, the first chapter, starting to do the research. Can I just do the step that I can do today? Can I just take that piece and do that? Can I maybe just read one sentence before, as I look at this book that I'm supposed to take in and incorporate and regurgitate? Can I do that? Can I just read the first little sentence? And I go from the sentence, then I go, well, hell, I'm here. I might as well read another one. Because there's usually there's a blockage that goes there. And this will be true with all the habits that we confront together. Because there'll be a layer that says, oh, this is too much. And just know that on the other side of too much is relief.
I like that.
Because you're right up against the blockage, and the blockage comes with too much, too much, too much, too much. And you take the step anyway. And on the other side, you go, oh, shit, I didn't realize that was going to be so easy. But the hard part was what you were building in your mind. So the mind is critical here, and it's part of I'm going to be helping you understand how the mind works so that you can use your mind to enhance your life, to use it to be successful in life with whatever it is. I don't mean success in gathering a bunch of gadgets. I mean success in I'm living a life and I feel grateful and blessed and happy about where I am today. And yes, is there more to do? Always, always.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I used to think I was going to get it done and then I could coast. I was going to figure it all out, coast. And I realized, wait a minute, if I'm on the planet and I'm breathing, there's always more to learn. That
Yeah.
can enhance me, not as a burden, as a blessing,
Absolutely.
as a gift. And that's just how I look at it now. Didn't used to look at it like that. It was just like, too much, too much.
Sure. And your opinion of yourself comes into this too, right? If you come into this with this mindset, that you've been doing something wrong or that you have this terrible habit, some of us feel like we don't deserve to live well, right? Some of us have had that message passed
Exactly.
on to us
Exactly.
that we don't deserve to live well or that we're not good enough. Can you speak to that as well?
Yes, because it's going to have to be confronted. And again, it's going to get to a level of honesty with yourself that is really hard to explain. It's going to have to be experienced. I remember when I first learned about affirmations in 1981. I think this guy gave me these affirmations to do, and he said, "I want you to say these affirmations over and over again. I deserve to feel good because I was depressed." And I said, "Well, but it's not true." But I would say them. And then I'd argue with myself. I didn't need anybody else to argue with me. I argue with myself, saying, no, you don't deserve to feel good. Look at all these things you've done. Well, you don't deserve it. You deserve to suffer, man. You deserve to be punished. Eventually, that started to change. And then I could say, well, wait a minute. Maybe I deserve to feel good about myself. Maybe it's okay. Oh, and then I had to get familiar with that. I had to get used to that and consider it might be true. And it doesn't mean I'm egotistical, doesn't mean I'm being grandiose, doesn't mean I'm special. It just means that I'm starting to consider something that I happen to believe is true now. And it always was true. I just didn't believe it was true. And so I actually had to deal with a belief and a habit of believing that I didn't deserve. And that consequently, I'm going to make decisions based on I don't deserve. So early on, I made a comment about that we're taking this program so that we can care about ourselves because we do care about ourselves. We want the best for ourselves. Maybe you'll tell me that's not true. I don't deserve it. And it's not uncommon. And even on the surface, you may say you deserve it, but you dig a little deeper, you find out why am I not doing that if I deserve to feel better? And I've already found out it makes me feel better, and I'm still not doing it. Then maybe I have to get to another root level, which says, well, deep, 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 deep inside of me, I think that I should be punished. I think I should suffer. I don't. And there's certain religious organizations. I'm not going to get into religion here, but they actually believe that we're here to suffer. That's the only reason we're here to suffer. And we're not going to supposed to have any joy of satisfaction until we've gone to the next place. And so I'm not trying to undermine those beliefs. I'm just saying my belief today is that I can be better at being a person of service to others, to care for others, to love my neighbors, and so on and so forth. If I'm feeling better inside of me, I can't give you something I don't have. So how can I give you patience and love and compassion if I don't have it myself?
Yeah.
I don't know how to give it because I don't have it. You can only give away what you have. So that's why this valuable of changing habits, of getting unstuck, is beneficial to other people as well. This is not about, oh, just me, 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 me. I'm not going to leave you there. I will not leave you there. This is about if you're getting the gift, if you enhance your life, it is mandatory for you to continue to enjoy it and give it away. And if you're living it, people are attracted to how you are energetically, how you come across, the life you seem to be having. And if they're attracted to that, then they want more. They want to know more about you. They want to be close to you because you got something that brings them warmth. If
Yeah.
you're a person who's totally blocked into negativity, and that's all that feels familiar and comfortable to you, you will only be attracted to that. You will not, you will be irritated with people who are happy.
Yeah.
You'll think they're lying. or they're just, they're just lucky. And if they had the life you had, they could never be happy. And they could never feel the way, that you do. Anyway, so all these are mindsets and belief systems and habits that have to be confronted along the way. And we're going to keep prying them apart. Saying, well, is that really true? How about let's look a little deeper? Maybe if I'm on the planet and I have a life and I was given a life somehow, maybe it's okay for me to blossom.
Yeah, you really have to stop telling yourself stories. We have to catch these stories. We have to see where we're lying to ourselves so that we can accept. And then we are able to live in the moment more, right? So the moment is inevitable. It is here
Mhm.
in every moment. And that's something that we're going to learn about a lot more in another module, but it does relate a lot to acceptance. Can you tell us a little bit more
Yeah,
about the moment and acceptance?
yeah, of course. I wanted to just start out with acceptance at the most basic level, which is I have a problem.
Mhm.
But the higher levels or the more complex levels of acceptance, not maybe more complex, but more subtle, have to do with the fact that accepting people, places, and things as they are is one layer of it. Another layer of it is in this moment, it's all I have. So in this moment, if I can accept what is, in this moment, right now we're having this conversation. If I can accept that in this moment, that's what we're doing. Okay. And if I can't accept that, then I'm going to have resistance. I'm going to be pulling away from that. Wait a minute. Maybe we're not doing this right. Maybe we should do it different, or maybe we're doing it all wrong. Or wait a minute. Let me just say, in this moment, based on everything I understand, I'm in this moment is complete and whole the way it is. Is there something more it could be different afterwards? Maybe. If you're in the future, you're not in the moment. If you're in the future, you're making up stories about something in the future that's not existing yet. You're making it up. So when we start out with the intention that we want to enhance the quality of our life and we're willing to do what's required, we're going into the future with an intention. And that'll help guide us. However, we don't stop there. We just come back to, okay, but what can I do in this moment? What can I do in this moment? Because that's where the life force is. That's where action is. That's where movement is. That's where vitality is. The richness is. And if I'm in the past, then I'm just digging up the ground. Either I'm fantasizing about how good it used to be, or I'm into how miserable it used to be and how awful it was and always has been. And I can dwell on that, or I can dwell on the fantasy of what it used to be like and say, well, it's not like that now, so now I'm sad because I want it to be like that, as opposed to saying, well, let me just make what I can out of this moment. Let me just accept this is all there is right this moment. And it is a precious thing. And it is a skill, just like any other skill. If people tell me they can't meditate because they can't quiet their mind. So how can you be in the moment if you can't quiet your mind? Well, how do you learn to meditate or how do you learn to quiet the mind? You practice. If you were ever good at anything in your life, you had to practice. Well, you didn't start out being a great whatever it might be, a great dancer or a great this. You developed habits, you develop skills, and you reproduce them over and over again until they become natural and part of the muscle memory and a part of the neural system. And so we're practicing what we can about how to quiet the mind. And when I quiet the mind, it's really a lot easier for me to see that at this moment, this is all that's existence. This is all there is. With a busy, busy mind, either in the past or future, I'm going to have a hard time with accepting what's actually happening because the, 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 the value of being in the moment with whatever is happening in this moment, in this moment, in this moment, then I have the flexibility, the freedom to be able to respond. If I'm only into the busyness of past and future, I can only react. There has to be a pause so that I can respond. A pause at the space, and that's living in the moment. And one of the things that I love to practice, and we're going to get into this a lot later on, is breath work. You can't breathe in the future and you can't breathe in the past. If I'm focusing on my abdominal region or my nostrils or whatever, I'm breathing, I'm in the moment. That doesn't mean my mind might not be going other places. It may be. But
Yeah.
if I focus primarily on the breath in this moment, then this is what is real. This is the thing that is true for this moment.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna do a lot of things that help us get other things out of the way so it's easier to get to the moment, or get other things out of the way, like old beliefs we have about ourselves, so that we can actually say, yeah, I deserve to be treated well. I was just a little kid trying to survive, developing habits, and I started getting messages that I was doing it wrong. And the truth was, I was just unconsciously attempting to help, even if I was the scapegoat, even if I was the problem child. The truth is, those kids are usually the ones that are most sensitive to the family, and they're most concerned, and they're trying to help. It's just that the way they're going about it makes it look like a problem.
Absolutely. I think that's so helpful. We're talking about working our way towards the moment, but in order to do that, we have to work on denial and we have to accept. And we also have to identify and take ownership of negative habits. So we've talked a little bit about how we develop these negative habits. It's not so much our fault. These are things that we take on as it's our human nature to do this. There's nothing that we've done wrong. But then there's also this two-prong approach that you've talked about with me in the past, and that's that we have to take ownership of negative habits, not just when it's our own negative habits, things that we've done, but also when things are done onto us or unto us. I believe, there's a different way of looking at that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you got this habit going. Innocently, you took it on because it was a way to survive. However, and just because you were the victim of circumstances and you adapted habits because you were being victimized, today, if you get stuck in being a victim, then you will look for how you're being victimized today in other ways. And you will actually pick yourself relationships which will victimize you, or where you will be victimized, and you will volunteer because you're supposed to be a victim. And if people aren't victimizing you, you may push them until they start abusing you because you're supposed to be victimized. And so you need the power in the position of being a victim. Today, I have to recognize, unless I want to continue to live the way I was trained to live, unless I want to use all those skills that I learned to survive, I'm going to have to consider that the functionality of the habits that I created to survive are going to have to be confronted with this idea that, wait a minute, am I still living in that same environment? Mm-hmm. Or am I just repeating the same environment over and over again? Because that's what most people do. We do what's familiar, we do what we're trained to do. And because it's familiar, even if we hate it, it's still familiar. And there's predictability because it's a part of our instincts. We like to predict. I predict, and I can be safer. So if I pick a victimizing relationship and then live in that one, then I'm familiar with it. I know my role. I know my job. I've got all the script, and I can play my part of the poor victim. And however, for us to make any difference here, we're going to have to say, wait a minute. Yes, horrible things happen to me. And was it right? Never. Did I learn these habits to just survive? Yes. However, today, if I'm going to change my life, I have to put all that aside and say, yes, regardless of all of that, I have to take responsibility for where I'm at today and what I'm doing today so that I can then start to move out of that.
I love that. This concept really helped me, Randy. So I was innocent, but I'm responsible. That I find really helpful is I can acknowledge that it wasn't my fault. It was done onto me and that I didn't cause for it to happen, but I am responsible because I am the one carrying this and I am the only one who can create change in my life. And if you're going to change a bad habit and take responsibility, then you have to ask yourself, what function did this addiction serve? And how is that function affecting me? And how can I take responsibility for this?
Exactly. I wrote something recently about how your addiction may have saved your life. And I've worked with people who told me that they were in so much pain and so miserable if they hadn't been drinking to anesthetize themselves or doing drugs to anesthetize themselves, they'd be able to just blotto everything, that they would have killed themselves. They're absolutely convinced the pain was too much. So I developed maybe this habit of numbing just to survive the pain I was in. However, I'm going to have to recognize that if I take away this habit numbing and anesthetizing, then some of the feelings that I've been avoiding will come to the surface. However, if I take responsibility for it, I'm the only one that can clean that up today. Doesn't really matter why my closets are all full of junk. Doesn't really matter while there's, nonsense all over the floor. Windows are broken out. The fact of the matter is that's what was passed on to me. A lot of that I had no control over. A lot of that I had no responsibility for, except now I have to be able to say, yes, those same horrible things happened to me, and it isn't going to excuse me for what I am or am not doing today. Yes, some of these things they've been functional for a while. Then what happens? You look at any addictive curve, something will start out having some value. It will serve a function and it will start to go up. And gradually it's having less. If you had a linear scale here, you had this bell curve, you would start to say, wait a minute. And then it gets up to where it's just 50-50. My drinking benefit and cost is about equal. And then eventually, because it's an addiction and it's a habit that you haven't been able to stop, then you start to go and progressively, even in a relationship, it goes from, oh, how wonderful it was. And, oh, yeah, well, it's not as great as it used to be, but it's still okay. Now it's getting progressively worse and worse and worse. And pretty soon I'm down here and there's not any redeeming value in this habit anymore. Every time I drink, I'm passed out. Every time I drink, I get in trouble. Every time I drink, I get in a fight. There's no redeeming value anymore, and I can't stop this relationship. Yes, every time we make up, it's wonderful. And within a relatively short period of time, I'm being harassed, verbally abused, and physically abused, possibly. And then we make up, and it feels like everything's going to be okay. Oh, it's wonderful again. We have a honeymoon. It's great. And then we start to go, and then pretty soon we see. And I've watched relationships go like this over and over again because originally it seemed to serve a function. I felt closeness. I felt there was pleasure in it in the beginning, and then that functionality wore out, and later on it was all torture, all misery, but I still couldn't stop.
Yes, it's going to be super important for us to review all these habits and what functions they serve. And so that's what we'll do during the homework. But for today, let's summarize what we've already gone through. So, module 1, we started off talking about intentions. By setting intentions, we're creating goals that will help us to achieve a higher quality of life. You're here, we're all here working together so that we can enhance your quality of life. We've also learned today about denial and how we cannot fix anything we're in denial about. The only way to change something is to accept and take responsibility for it, even if the issue wasn't our fault. So we have to be willing to be willing. We now also understand that we haven't done anything wrong. Our bad habits have a function and they serve a purpose. It's our human nature to develop these habits and to protect ourselves from discomfort. We've found ways that are no longer serving us. So we're now identifying those things and we're taking responsibility for them so that we can create change in our lives. Homework for week 1. Your homework for this week is a 2-part piece. You're going to start with part 1, which is setting intentions. And so we've talked about intentions and the importance of intentions. What you really want to do is just brainstorm. Think about why it is that you're here. What is your reason for being here? What is it that you're hoping to change? Let's get clear on what led you here and how much energy you have for this program. So think about these intentions. So you're here at the beginning and picture yourself at the end. And what is your vision of this person at the end of the program? What do they look like? What are your intentions for becoming that person? And then the second part of your homework today is going to be to make a list of bad habits that you're ready to let go of and that you want and are willing to work on through this program. So this can be a list that you brainstorm. I think it also would be beneficial to create a list of habits and then also consider what functions you think they serve. For example, I feel like I have to do insert habit. So you feel like you have to do something. And then when I do this, I fulfill my desire or need to, and then you're going to enter the function. And the reason we're creating this list is because we're starting to do the work to replace these habits. We need to know what functions we need to replace so that we can find solutions to these repetitive habits that we're experiencing. So you have your workbook with all the information that we've just gone through today. In your workbook, you can find your homework as well. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to contact us at the email provided. That's all for today. Thank you so much for all the energy and attention that you brought forward. We're so glad you're here with us. Again, if you have questions, if you need support, we are here for you. Please feel free to reach out. We're so glad to have you here getting unstuck with us. We'll see you all on the group call.
Thank you.